So I'm sure that you guys have seen pictures of highways with light streaks going by, or star pictures, or waterfall pictures where the water looks really soft when it falls. Well, let me tell you something. All those pictures are made from the shutter speed. Those are called long exposure pictures. What is up, guys? And what the hell? My hat. What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we will be talking about shutter speed. This is the second video out of 3 for our series, How to Shoot Manual and Get the Perfect Exposure for Your Pictures. But before we get into today's video, make sure to go check out the previous video on Aperture, and then come back here and watch this video. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm sure that you guys have seen pictures of highways with light streaks going by, or star pictures, or waterfall pictures where the water looks really soft when it falls. Well, let me tell you something. All those pictures are made from the shutter speed. Those are called long exposure pictures. Now you're probably asking, what is shutter speed? Well, shutter speed is the amount of time that your camera sensor is exposed to light. That's basically it. So how does shutter speed actually work? Well, shutter speed is measured by a fraction of a second. It can go as high as 1/8,000th of a second on some cameras and as low as 30 seconds. The easiest way to think about it is the faster the shutter speed is, the less light that goes into your camera and hits the sensor. The slower the shutter speed is, the more light that goes into your camera and hits the sensor. What are the effects of a fast shutter speed and a slow shutter speed? Well, a fast shutter speed will literally freeze frame your subject and whatever they're doing. A slow shutter speed will start to introduce motion blur depending on how much time you let your sensor open to the world. So this is pretty cool. Now you can see how everything's starting to piece together to make that perfect exposure triangle of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. So let's say you're taking a portrait of somebody and you're using an aperture of f1.8. That aperture is pretty wide, meaning there's lots of light going into the camera already. So therefore, your shutter speed has to be at 1/100th of a second or a bit higher, depending on what your ISO is. Let's say you're going to take a landscape shot and you're going to use an aperture of f11 or f16. Your shutter speed has to replace the missing light from the aperture. So you're going to use a slower shutter speed to let more light into your camera to get that perfect exposure. How would you get a long exposure shot? Well, it's fairly easy and super simple. It's basically just lowering your shutter speed to a second or anything slower than a second to achieve motion blur from your subject. So knowing this, if you're taking pictures of cars moving on a highway at night, you would put your aperture at an aperture of f11, a pretty sharp aperture. And then you would lower your shutter speed to a second or anything slower than a second to replace the light missing from the aperture. Then you would adjust your ISO accordingly to whatever you're missing, whatever light you're missing to get that perfect exposure. And that's basically it. That's a long exposure shot. Also, before I forget, you should always use a tripod when you are doing a long exposure shot, because you don't want to get that motion shakiness in your final image. It will look really bad. So that is it for today, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video and you guys learned something from it, leave a like down below, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Also, press that bell to be the first one to get notified when I post. Other than that, I will see you guys next Monday. Peace!